Welcome to the Modern Medicine Movement Podcast with Dr. Thomas Hemingway. Have you ever looked in the mirror and said to yourself, I thought I'd be healthier, in better shape, feel better both physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and be further along in my life? If so, come on this journey with my dad as he explores all things health and wellness from a holistic medical perspective, even as a classically trained physician. He'll share integrative strategies to optimize health and inspire you to join the modern medicine movement.
Welcome, everyone, to the Modern Medicine Movement Podcast. And a big aloha to all you out there. Thomas Hemingway here, and I'm super excited, super grateful to be here with you. Just want to give a quick shout out to my son, Isaac. Thank you for that intro. Thank you to my wife, Brooke, who's continued to encourage me with this and make this finally not just a dream, but a reality. Thank you. And really to you guys, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy lives for yourselves and for your health, because truly this podcast, it's for you. My goal really is for you and us together to achieve optimal health, total and complete health of your mind, your body, spirit, emotions, relationships. Heck, we can even throw in there financial health. Truly everything health. I'm on this journey with you and strive to add value to you. So keep the feedback coming. I'm here to serve you. So let's get right down into it. Today's topic, we're going to be sharing about stress, and a very specific, type of stress indeed, which many of us may even be facing right now today, due to the kind of crazy world events. No, this is not a podcast today about the coronavirus, but that continues to be on my mind and yours. And so please be safe, please be well, please protect yourselves and your family. If you want more specific information on that, you can listen to my previous podcast exactly on that topic. But right now, for today, we are going to talk about one of the collateral damages that this global pandemic is starting to surface. And I think now, unfortunately, this is only the beginning and will probably get worse before it gets better. So let's just go ahead and tackle it now, nip it in the bud. And that's what's caused and stimulated me to choose this topic for today, because it has to do with the stress caused in our lives due to finances and how we can strive to improve our own financial situation with some practical steps. And I have an amazing guest here with me in my home studio. I'm super excited to have him here. We're going to talk with him. He's going to give us some practical steps. He's got, over a decade of experience in the finance sector, graduated with his MBA from Notre Dame, got a lot to share and offer to us. So I'm going to have him on here in just a sec. And, just wanted to kind of set the stage for that because, when we talk about stress, we know that in and of itself, it's linked to lots of health issues, linked to physical health issues, mental health issues, emotional health. It really can play into our lives in so many ways, often in ways we may not even personally recognize, though others, like people close to us, perhaps our family or others, can recognize this and see it in us. So let me give you an example of this sort of process of how stress affects us. So we know that stress causes a fight or flight reaction, right? It causes the release of adrenaline, cortisol. These hormones kind of pep us up in the acute phase, but chronically actually are bad for us. They can suppress our immune system, our digestive, sleep, and other reproductive systems, which if sustained can cause them to stop working normally. They can cause all kinds of health issues and problems in the long run. And so we specifically here are going to talk about the stress caused by finances, because it's been shown that this is so omnipresent, so common out there in our communities, in our world, and people that have high financial stress are at least twice as likely to report, having poor health overall, and even more than 4 times as likely to complain of things like chronic headaches, depression, other ailments. So financial stress is huge. It can also be associated with high-risk behaviors like, drinking too much alcohol, drug abuse, overeating, sedentary behaviors like too much, web surfing, TV watching, what have you. And these can also worsen one's health, right? Too sedentary, and can worsen your finances too. So this, can spiral down, leading to even poorer health both directly and indirectly through these unhealthy behaviors. This can cause, by virtue of the increased financial challenges and the stress from that, can actually, like I mentioned, worsen your health, but can cause increasing medical expenses, which can also decrease your productivity at work. Lots of negative financial implications. But one that I've seen a lot, working in the ER, can occur from the stress of just not having the financial resources to be able to really afford healthcare. And so people come way too late. Their presentations of their new ailments are way delayed because they don't want to go seek help. They don't have insurance. They know it's going to cost too much money, so they don't go to the doctor. Things get worse and worse. Finally, they come into the ER either because they're just so dang unwell and so sick they just can't live day to day, or their family members have finally dragged them there and they're in bad shape. And then they need not only emergency care, but often hospital admission. And ultimately, this is way more expensive than having good, comprehensive, preventative outpatient care. So the, high out-of-pocket costs, the increased stress that comes into play, it's just really widespread, and this is often an issue with people, choosing super high deductible plans, simply because they're cheaper, right? They often have a super high deductible, so they don't want to come in until it's really, really late. And though, I'm an ER doctor and I love to help people in any situation, but I'd rather you be healthy and stay healthy and avoid the ER and avoid the hospital, because you're so much better served and for your long-term management to have outpatient preventative care so that you don't get so sick that you need to be in the ER. But if you're there, we're here, we're happy to help. But, it's so common because at least 1 in 4 of us has trouble paying medical bills. Many have, missed filling or taking prescription medication that they need because it's too expensive. Many don't fulfill their healthcare treatments because it's too expensive. And this, especially with people with chronic conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, etc., will cause their health to further deteriorate because they're left untreated, partly treated, or just less than optimally treated. In fact, 56% of us as Americans, at least here, have admitted to missing, either treatments or medications because of the cost. So we got to break the cycle. We have to change this, because left to itself, this is just going to continue to spiral out of control, which not only has terrible consequences for the individual, for their family, but also for their employers, for our society, for our world. Not only in a stress and health situation where that is worsened, but also financially, it's way more expensive to treat these things when they've had the time to get uncontrolled and they've gotten more progressive in the disease process, so it's way more cost efficient as well as health efficient to nip these things in the bud and take care of them, have a preventative approach. And there are so many things we can do. And there's practical steps that we can take to improve our financial behaviors. And as promised, this podcast is going to be primarily about practical steps that we can take to better control our finances, to improve our spending habits, to improve our savings. And this involves, getting help, and I'm not a financial expert, so I've invited a guest to join us with us tonight because we need to have some changes in this arena. We can't continue with the status quo. It's not sustainable. That's one of the reasons why our healthcare in the U.S. is so dang expensive, because we're not awesome at preventative, treatment. We're not great at it. And we're not great at chronic disease. We're getting better, but we could be even better. And so let's talk a little bit about tonight how we can improve our financial situation so the stress of our finances doesn't have to lead to our downward health spiral. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn now to Jared Benson, who's a finance expert. He's going to, teach us some tips and practical tricks where we can get started right now, today, because we can impact this, we can change. And so let's do this. No pressure to do, Jared. Here we go.
Great, Thomas. Thanks for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. I think this topic is one of the most important things that any individual could focus on in their life, because finance and a sound financial plan is really the key, one of the keys to happiness. And I agree with you 100% that if you don't have a good financial plan or your finances are in bad shape, it definitely leads to stress, and stress leads to health problems. So if we have a good financial plan and a sound building to build our financial future on, then we can avoid a lot of the stress and maybe even some health issues later on in life. So that's a great introduction. I really appreciate it. Let me tell everyone a little bit about me, and then we'll get into some basics and some pointers that I find very helpful when I sit down at the kitchen table across from people that I help and that I work with. But first of all, I'm a financial industry veteran. I got my MBA in finance from the University of Notre Dame more than a decade ago. I've worked at a Fortune 100 company for the last 12 years, and I'm a coach and a mentor regarding personal finance for individuals and families in many aspects of finance. When you think about finance, it's not just investing in mutual funds or the stock market through your 401k. There's a lot of different steps in building a sound financial plan. So I help folks in all those kinds of areas. Currently, I live in Oregon, but I help families across the country. I have 3 growing kids. I have a wife, a mother-in-law that lives with me. We have a dog, a rabbit, soon to have some pigs. We're in the middle of our own journey to build wealth and become financially independent. And really, this all started for me about a decade ago when I wanted to improve my own finances. So I started studying, I started learning. I wanted to know how money worked, and for some periods in my life, why it didn't work for me, why it seemed to be working against me. And so that's where my journey started. And now I sit down with people and I help them understand some key concepts about finance. And it's really eye-opening, right? Instead of making someone else rich, why not make yourself rich? And those are the key concepts that we'll touch on a little bit today. My general philosophy regarding personal finance is you have to be fully engaged. You can't just be putting money in a 401k from your paycheck and think that the future is going to be bright and shiny and rainbows and unicorns.
Oh, darn it, man. That's what I was doing. Shoot. See, I knew I had you out here for a reason, man. I could learn something too. So awesome.
I mean, you have to be fully engaged. If you're going to be an expert in one thing in life, you need to be an expert in your own finances, and obviously do a good job at your place of employment, but you need to know what's going on with your own finances and have that under control. Do not sit on the sidelines when it comes to building your personal and family wealth. So there's a few milestones, actually 7 of them, that when I sit down with someone, I talk about, and we mentor and we coach and we discuss, and then we create plans around these 7 key milestones for financial security. The first one is education, understanding some key concepts of how money works. The second one is making sure you have the right kind of protection in your life. And when I say protection, I'm talking about the different kinds of insurances that can protect you from financial ruin. The third one is an emergency fund, the importance of an emergency fund and building that over time. The fourth one is debt management, right? Avoiding debt, but if you do have debt, employing strategies that enable you to get out of debt as fast as possible and stay out of debt. The fifth one is cash flow. There's a few different ways that you can increase your cash flow. And that's very important because sometimes people that are swimming in debt, they don't have enough money to pay off their debt in an adequate amount of time. So they need to go find more streams of income or better ways to manage their income that they're bringing in now in order to pay down that debt. So we'll talk a little bit about cash flow. And then after you've got all those steps down, or at least you're working on them, then it's time to talk about building wealth through things like investments. Now, a lot of the commercials you see on TV, they focus on investing in the stock market. Go buy this, go buy that.
How about go buy gold, man? I see those all day long.
But it doesn't matter if you don't have a good foundation, good insurance to protect your family. If you don't have an emergency fund, or if you're swimming in debt, what are investments good for if you have to go cash out those investments to pay for an emergency, right? Or if you have to go liquidate those investments to get yourself out of debt 10 years down the road when you're about to go bankrupt, right? You have to build your financial house in order, right? You need to start in the order that I told you and build over time. It takes time to become wealthy. Wealthy people don't become wealthy overnight unless they were born that way. And if you look at the statistics in the United States, most millionaires were not born millionaires. They had good habits, and over time, they became wealthy because they were responsible and they had a plan. And the seventh and final key milestone for financial security is protecting your wealth. So after you've worked so hard throughout your life to build wealth, you need to protect it through what we call estate planning. So those are the 7 key milestones for financial security, and we'll cover each of them in a little bit of detail as we go throughout this discussion tonight.
And we'll put all those steps too in the show notes. So don't worry, you don't have to sit down and take notes during all this. Just listen in, and we'll put them in the show notes too. So
yeah, and this isn't a huge secret, right? If you listen to some of the nationally syndicated, financial gurus out there, what I'm going to say today, you'll hear a lot in other places, right? And so I don't have any super secret formula for becoming wealthy, right? You just have to have the commitment and the determination to sit down and fix your finances and do it over a long period of time, right? So let's talk about a few key educational concepts regarding finance and how money works. And this is really important because I think, especially in the United States, maybe in other countries, they focus on personal finance education when kids are in school. But what I've noticed when I sit down with clients or, whatever age they are, Mom and Dad never sat them down when they were at home and said, Susie or John, this is what personal finance is all about, right? Avoid those credit cards, right? And save 10%. Like, Mom and Dad never sat us down and told us to do this kind of stuff, right? And if you look at the statistics on how many high schools offer personal finance classes, it's actually appalling.
Got to be super low, man.
It's
mine,
really
mine
low.
didn't offer it, but
Right.
that was 20 plus years ago. So I don't know what they're like now, but
And so most of us, we get out into the real world and people are offering us credit cards. You can go get a car, pay over 5 years. And sometimes you can pay over 7 years now, right? And you're like, oh, wow, I'm an adult. I'm going to go get all these awesome things. And you just get in the rut of having debt and paying debt and paying debt and paying debt. And you never learn. And many of us learn from making mistakes, right? Maybe you end up getting over your head when you buy a house. Maybe you buy something that's too big, right? That you can't afford. And then you lose a job, or your wife or your husband loses a job. And then you have to short sell or foreclose, right? And then you're halfway through your life and you're like, oh my gosh, my finances are in a ruin, right? Because no one ever sat down and said, hey, this is how money works. And you need to have money work for you, not work against you. So we're going to talk about some of those key concepts before we go into more depth on the 7 milestones. So first of all, what is wealth, right? Wealth isn't a dirty word, right? Wealth is basically you having more assets than you have liabilities, right? A house is not an asset unless it's paid off, right? So you don't own your home until you've paid off that last mortgage payment and the bank doesn't own the note anymore. A car is not an asset if you have a loan on it. Okay, you have to understand the difference between assets and liabilities. Being wealthy means you have more assets than liabilities. And so our goal throughout our financial journey in life should be getting rid of our liabilities as soon as possible so that we can have more wealth than liabilities. So what kind of liabilities does a typical person have? Well, we have a mortgage. Some people have car payments. Kids are a liability, financially speaking. Yes, they are, right?
dang, man, I got a lot of those. I guess I'm in trouble.
Yeah, Thomas has got a lot of liabilities in that area.
I need help.
And I'm not suggesting that we kick the kids out of the house before the age of 18
okay,
to
good.
get rid of the financial liability, but they are a liability financially speaking. So what we need to do is focus on getting our liabilities down as low as possible, as fast as possible. So then we can have more wealth than liabilities. More assets than liabilities, rather. What most Americans do is they start paying down on their vehicle, and then they see the next shiny object, and they go trade it in, and they get the next model, right? And they reset their liability line, so it's just as high as it was 2 or 3 years ago. And their line, which represents their amount of liabilities, never crosses the line which represents wealth. Liabilities always remain high. Wealth always remains low. What do people do when they see that the interest rates are lower on mortgages? Right? They go refi.
Let's go let's refinance.
Right.
We're gonna have all this extra money. Woohoo.
Let's say they've paid 5 years into their mortgage and they're like, ooh, lower rates. they reset their mortgage for another 30 years. They basically, used up that 5 years of equity and said, no, let's extend it another 5 years, right? Right? They saw a shiny object. They say, oh, maybe we can get an extra 500 square feet, right? Or maybe we can get this or that. And it's nice to have nice things. I'm not going to deny that. But we also have to think about our financial future. So basically the goal in life should be, when we're talking about a financial plan, pay down our liabilities as fast as possible so that our wealth line is higher than our liability line, okay? So that is the definition of wealth, right? And that should be our goal. Another key concept is the time value of money. This is really important to know. Even if you're older and you haven't started very much in terms of your financial plan, you still have time to make a difference in your financial trajectory. What I mean by the time value of money is that when you're younger and you have more time to live, your money can grow over a longer period of time. $1 today saved is worth a lot more money than $1 saved in 10 years. Let me give you a brief explanation using some numbers, and I hope you can follow along. I'm going to use some round numbers and some very simple examples to show you the huge power of the time value of money if you determine to make a difference and start now with your financial plan.
And I promise you guys, he's going to keep this pretty simple, that all of us, including the non-financially savvy like me, can figure this out in our heads without a calculator. So this is some cool stuff.
So let's say we have a smart girl named Jenny. At 22 years old, she says, I'm going to prepare for my future. She decides to put $4,000 a year away in a retirement account. And she does that for 8 years. So $4,000 a year times 8 years, she puts a total of $32,000 away. And she stops when she's 30 years old, and she just lets that money grow until age, let's say 67. She has $1.4 million in the bank, ready for retirement. That's age 20, from 22 to age 30, she put away $32,000. Now, the interest rate, I'm not going to say what interest rate I'm assuming because it doesn't matter. The interest rate is the same in this example as in the second example. So the interest rate is almost irrelevant, okay? So let's take John. He wasn't as smart as Jenny. He wanted to party up in his 20s. He wanted to go out, have a good time. He got to his 30s. He was 30 years old, and he said, you know what? I should probably start saving for retirement. He took $4,000 a year, the same amount that Jenny took from the age of 22 to 30. See, Jenny started at 22. She stopped at 30. John, being not so smart, he starts at 30 years old, but the same amount of $4,000 a year. He has to contribute the same $4,000 a year for 37 years.
What?
37 years. Just to get close to what Jenny has in retirement.
And she only put that down for 8 years? Are you kidding me?
Only 8 years, right?
What?
So the difference in what they put away towards retirement is $120,000. John had to put down $120,000 more than Jenny over time because he waited 8 years. That is the time value of money. So the message to all of you, if you're young, start now. If you're old, don't waste any more time.
Start today or tomorrow, right? once you pull over
Right.
and you get on the phone with your financial planner. Start soon.
For grandmas and grandpas out there, do
Oh
something
my
for your
gosh.
grandkids and start something for them today, because they have many, many, many more years for their money to double and double and double and double. So that's the time value of money. It's extremely, extremely important to understand that. Another key concept is what we call the rule of 72. Now, the rule of 72 is a financial concept that will tell you how long it takes your investment, your money, to double. And the way it works is you take the number 72, you divide it by the interest rate that you're receiving, and the result of that is the number of years it takes for your money to double. So let's use some examples here. 72 divided by 2%, right? 72 divided by 2 equals 36 years. So if you have your money in a CD in a bank, for example, you might be getting 2%.
I doubt it. That's actually
Yeah,
really
that's
good
actually
these
really
days. If you find 2%, let me know. I want to know
Right.
where that was.
But so let's say you have a 2% financial asset, right? It'll take you 36 years for that money to double. Probably not the greatest place for you to park your nest egg for retirement, because it's only going to double once or twice in your lifetime. So let's use another example. 72 divided by 6%. So it would take 12 years with a 6% interest rate for your money to double. And if you could find something that gives you 9%, your money doubles every 8 years. So that's the rule of 72, and it makes a huge difference in the duplication of your money. And this isn't simple interest we're talking about. This is compound interest. So you're earning interest on top of interest. So just a couple of really simple mathematical examples of the rule of 72. If I had $10,000 at the age of 20 and I was only earning 2%, my money would double when I'm 56, because it would double in 36 years, right? I'm the age of 20. I had 36 years. I'm 56. By the age of 56, I would have a whole whopping $20,000,
Ooh.
which probably doesn't even beat inflation, right? But if I had 6%, maybe a financial asset that was giving me 6%, my money would double every 12 years. So I start when I'm 20. When I'm 32, I have 20,000. When I'm 44, I have 40,000, because it's the doubling of the 20,000.
The compound effect,
Yep.
guys. This is where it's at.
When I'm 56, I have 80,000, because it's the doubling of the 40,000. So look at the comparison between 2% and 6%. At age 56, at 2% interest rate, I only have $20,000. At age 56, with a 6% interest rate, I have $80,000, more than four times the 2% example. So what I want you to take away from the rule of 72 is it does matter where your money is, because if you want your money to double and double and double and quadruple, you need to look for assets and financial instruments that give you a higher interest rate. There is a drawback, right? Usually when you're out for more gains, there is more risk. So you have to take that into consideration as well. One thing I do want to point out is the rule of 72 can work against you in the case of having debt. So just like the rule of 72 can double your investment based off of the interest rate.
Those dang credit cards, that's what he's talking about.
Exactly. So Thomas, what's the average credit card rate in the US, you'd say?
20%, let's say.
Let's say 20%.
Some more than that, some less than that, but kind of a rough average.
So let's take the rule of 72. 72 divided by 20%, and I'm just going to round to about 3.5. Okay.
That's cool.
72 divided by 20, 3.5. 3.5 years for your debt to double if all you're doing is paying the minimum payment. That's crazy.
Yikes.
That's ridiculous. That's why people that get in the trap of paying for things via debt, and then they take some equity out on their home, and then they get that nicer vehicle, and then they have an emergency and they use their credit card, and then they find themselves in a situation where they're just paying the bare minimum to satisfy the credit card companies. They feel like they're never getting out of debt. It's because of the rule of 72. That 20% plus interest rate on your credit card is causing your debt to double at a rate of about 3.5 years. So that's why debt is so bad in terms of your financial plan. And that's how the rule of 72 can work against you. It can be fantastic and work for you, but it can also work against you.
Pretty easy to have that work against you. I'm telling you, I think we all have credit cards. So I think that's the biggest takeaway I get from this. Just simple rule is how profound this compounding effect is, both in a positive fashion, but also negatively if you got debt, especially credit card debt. So that's a big one to avoid, which I'm sure Jared will touch on soon.
Yep. And then the final thing, not all investments and saving vehicles are treated the same for tax purposes. So just make sure you understand what your tax strategy is. If you don't have a tax strategy, you don't understand what the tax qualification of whatever you're putting money in. If you don't understand what that tax qualification is, it's good that you spend some time to understand. Let me give you an example, or actually I'll pose a question. For everyone out there, do you think taxes are going up in the future or going down? You think they're going up or going down? What are some of the...
They always go up.
Right. What are some of the free things that politicians are promising these days? Right? They're promising free college education, free...
stuff that costs more money, basically, right?
Exactly.
Let's not even talk about all that.
So all this free stuff, the expansion of Medicare, the fact that Social Security is projected to go broke, necessarily means that taxes are going to go up. So if you know that something's going to be more expensive in the future, and we're talking about taxes being more expensive, right? If you know something's going to be more expensive in the future, when should you pay for that something? You should pay for it today when it's cheaper,
now.
Right? So what I mean is if you're putting money in a 401k, there's nothing wrong with putting money in a 401k, okay? My general suggestion is if your company is matching your contribution to a 401k, take all the free money your company will give you. right? Because that's 100% return right from the get-go if your money is matched. If your money is not matched in your 401k contribution and you believe that taxes are going up in the future, you're basically delaying that tax liability until the time in the future when you think taxes are going to be higher. So why not divert some of your retirement savings into an after-tax retirement account? Something like a Roth IRA, right? Or there are some permanent life insurance options that are after tax as well, right? You avoid the big tax liability that you think is coming down the road. So that's what I mean when I say know the difference between the tax classification of where you're putting your money for retirement. So that's some basic education. Now I'm going to go through the rest of the 7 milestones in kind of brief and quick fashion. Obviously, I could sit here and talk about this stuff for hours on end. So we already talked about the education milestone. The second milestone is protection. When I talk about protection, I mean insurance. And there's all different kinds of insurance that can protect you from financial catastrophe, right? There's health insurance. There's disability insurance. There's life insurance, right? Life insurance is what enables you to bridge the financial gap when you're younger and maybe you're the breadwinner and you pass away. In my case, my wife has been a fantastic mother and homemaker in our home, and I love her to death because of it. She's done a fantastic job with our children. And obviously I do the best I can when I come home, but I can't compare to her, right? She hasn't had the time to go to university and get a degree. She doesn't have a vocation, right? I'm sure she could go find a job out there. It wouldn't replace the income that I get from my job outside of the home. So if I were to die and I didn't leave anything for her, she would be financially devastated, right? So life insurance is that thing that bridges the gap between your financial liabilities and your wealth. So when we're younger and we don't have more wealth than financial liabilities, we need some type of life insurance to bridge that gap. Now, how much life insurance do you need? There's a basic method that we use in the industry called DIME, just like, a nickel, dime, quarter, DIME, and it's an acronym. DIME stands for debt, income, mortgage, and education. So if you list those on a piece of paper and you say, okay, if I were to pass away today, how much debt would I leave behind that my significant other would have to take care of? Income, how much income replacement, how many years of my income would my loved one want if I were to not be around anymore? Mortgage, M, if I'm leaving a mortgage behind, I'd better leave some money to pay that off unless I'm expecting my spouse to sell the house on top of grieving for me. I hope she'd grieve for me.
She would, man. She's awesome.
And then E, education. Do I want to leave any type of education funding for my kids, right? So if you go through that exercise for you and you go through that exercise for your spouse, you add up those numbers, that's the amount of life insurance that you should have, okay? And homemakers and stay-at-home moms that are listening to this, and husbands that are listening to with the wives, you cannot underestimate the dollar amount that it costs to run a home and take care of kids, right? So husbands that are working, that are the main breadwinner, don't think that if your spouse died, your wife died, that you need less life insurance on her than she needs on you. That's a fallacy. Just think of how much it would cost to replace all the work that your wife or whoever stays at home. It doesn't have to be husband working out and the wife stay. It could be the opposite. Who cares, right? But don't underestimate the cost of someone running the home and taking care of the kids.
Super important. Yeah, that stuff is just invaluable. I mean, You both got to take part in this and really just crack it down and make a list. I mean, it's not hard to do, but it's super worth it.
So that's how you calculate the amount of life insurance you need. Now, there's all different types of life insurance, and it can be kind of confusing. The simple breakdown is there's two main types of life insurance. Term life insurance, which is for a determined period of time, usually 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, or 30 years. After the policy has run its course, meaning if you buy a 20-year policy, the first day of the 21st year, you don't have that life insurance anymore. You don't get your money back either. But you were insured during that 20-year period of time. And because you don't get your money back, similar to car insurance, right? If you never get in an accident in your life, you don't get your car insurance money back. This type of life insurance is similar to that. But you certainly are happy that you had life insurance if something does happen, and your family would be even happier. So that's term life insurance. Generally, it's cheaper than the other kind of life insurance. So you can get a lot of coverage for a little amount of money. And there are fantastic benefits with the newer types of term life insurance where you can actually access the death benefit while you're living in the case of a chronic illness, a critical illness, or a terminal illness. So you could potentially access the death benefit, hundreds of thousands of dollars, to help you, the insured person, fight the financial consequences of having cancer, of being in a car accident, of having a heart attack, having a stroke. So life insurance these days isn't just a death benefit. It's evolved over time. The other kind of life insurance is permanent life insurance, and it's life insurance for your entire life. So no matter at what point in your life you die, the life insurance company will pay your beneficiaries the amount of the policy. Because it's for your entire life, it's more expensive than term, because term has a determined period of time that it would pay out. But permanent life insurance also comes with cash value growth. So you can use it as an investment as well. It can be used to fund retirement if you get into the policy early enough and in a healthy enough status so that most of your premium is going towards the cash value growth within the policy. So those are the two main types of life insurance. And it's good for you to reevaluate your insurance needs on a regular basis and the beneficiaries, because mortality tables are changing all the time. If I'm generally the same health that I was 5 years ago, the average life expectancy is actually probably better. So if I go back to my insurance company or maybe a different insurance company and I try and get the same policy, I might even pay lower than I am now because mortality tables have changed. So just because you have a life insurance policy and you started it 5 years ago, it doesn't mean that you have the best that you could have today. So it's worthwhile to reassess on a regular basis. The third milestone that we talked about was
this one's my favorite.
Yeah.
This one's, I think, something we don't think about often enough.
The emergency fund, right?
Absolutely. I mean, especially times like now, I think a lot of us could use that fund. So.
Yep. I mean, we're waiting for Congress to pass some stimulus bill, but I'm sure there are people that can't pay their mortgage today, right? Because of a lack of an emergency fund. And emergency funds don't just pop out of nowhere, right? It takes time to build an emergency fund because you have everyday expenses to pay for and you have everyday life to live, right? So if you currently don't have an emergency fund, it's okay. Just start with something small, right? Tax season is coming up. Maybe use your tax return to supercharge the starting of your emergency fund. And then put away $25, $50, if you can even handle $75 or $100 a month into your emergency fund, do that. Start small, grow your emergency fund to 3 to 6 months of your basic expenses. Some people even go big and they want 12 months of their expenses. If they lost their job and the economy was terrible, I mean, who knows what's going to happen now in these next few months? It's important for you to start and have an emergency fund. And the recommendation that I usually give people is put it in a separate bank account. Do not have it in the bank account that is all your comings and goings of paying your bills. Because what happens most of the time, and when I sit down with people and they, oh yeah, my checking account's my emergency fund, and that's also where I pay my bills. What they realize is at the end of the month, there's nothing in that checking account and it's no good for an emergency fund. So you need to have a separate bank account. And I actually recommend that people put it in a different bank that's a nuisance to get to. Like you have to go an extra mile to access your emergency fund, right? You want to make it difficult for you to use that because it should only be used for true emergencies. When you lose a job, when your car breaks down, when there are broken appliances at home, maybe unexpected medical bills that take you above and beyond your monthly expenses. That is an emergency, okay? And when you do have to use it, replace whatever you take out of it. It may take time to replace that, but you've got to replace it. A solid emergency fund allows you to have peace of mind. It does, because when a job loss comes, you're not freaking out. You know that you have 6 months of expenses there, or whatever your emergency fund amount is. You know that you have time to go find something else and your family will be okay.
Super important, guys. I mean, I don't know why this has always been something I thought was key in this whole financial planning, because I think not enough of us really plan on it. And this whole idea about a different account, that's ideal. You know, you want to make it hard for yourself. You want to keep that separate. And I've even been guilty of not doing that. So it's good to kind of hear this again, to even think about my own situation, because we never know what's going to happen. And I promise you, if you're prepared, you're not going to be stressed out. You're not going to be as anxious about it. It's going to, it's going to help with all those other things we talked about earlier with your health. So super important, no matter where you start, 5, 10, 20, 30 bucks a month, $100 a month, whatever you can do, just make it happen. Even if you haven't, start today.
Right on. Exactly. So we're about halfway through the 7 milestones. The next one. If you have an emergency fund, you'll avoid this next pitfall of you can think of it as a milestone, but you can think of it as the destroyer of wealth, and that is debt. Debt. So many of us find ourselves in piles of debt, and really all that debt is you're making someone else rich. That's all you're doing. You're making someone else wealthy instead of making yourself wealthy. You're letting your money work for someone else instead of your money working for you. So the fourth milestone is debt management. Okay. There are few things that debt should be used for. And this is my own personal opinion. You might have a different opinion, but there are very few things. One is a mortgage, and the other one is education for a degree that will actually lead to a career that pays the debt back. Okay. And moms and dads out there, you need to counsel with your kids that are going to school, college, university, or thinking about it, and they're thinking about taking out student loans. Make sure that they are studying something that they can actually pay those student loans back with the career that they're pursuing. Okay. Because if you watch anything on YouTube about the student loan crisis, you have people that have studied this or that, and they're working at a fast food joint, and they're deferring all their interest on their student loans, and the debt just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's actually changing the goals and the dreams of the millennial generation, because they think they're going to live under student loan debt forever. And it's not really anyone else's fault but the person that signed the papers, right? Maybe they didn't have the education, they didn't understand what debt was, but that's our responsibility as parents to prepare our kids, okay? So yes, educational debt is fine as long as it's serving a purpose, okay? And the purpose shouldn't be just go to school and party for 4 or 5 years, okay?
Oh man, no, that's key, and I'm guilty of that. I'm actually still paying off my student loans even today, but I'll get
but
there
you
soon.
Studied something that actually allows you to earn money to pay
true.
those student loans.
I can pay them, but I got to get rid of them. But yeah, I definitely.
If I could be president for the day, I would say student loan, the amount that a student can take out is directly correlated with the average salary of what they're studying. That's what I would make a huge change to the student loan industry. Colleges and universities wouldn't like me, but that's what I would do. So anyways, debt comes in many forms, right? You can have installment payments of any kind. When I lived in Brazil, when I was younger, earlier in my professional life, you could buy groceries on installment. Isn't that crazy?
Payment plan at the grocery store.
But we could list a million things: credit cards, personal loans, home equity lines of credit, cars, RVs, dirt bikes or quads, ATV. Like you could buy almost anything with debt. So it's super tempting, because the way they get you is they say, oh, it's only $100 a month. It's only $200. Oh yeah, I can probably fit that in my budget. Yeah, but you're doing it for 6 years. Every year, if you add another $100 or $200 a month, you're swimming in debt, and you're paying someone else interest. You're not earning interest yourself. So debt can easily get out of control to the point where you feel like you're swimming in it, because there's no strategy to pay it off. So when I sit down with someone and I ask every single line item of debt that they have, and we use some common strategies that are out there. It's no secret, right? There's a strategy called snowball. There's a strategy called avalanche. Snowball is you pay the smallest debt first. Avalanche is you pay the highest interest rate debt first. But once you pay that debt off, you don't decrease the dollar amount from your budget that's going towards servicing debt. So let's say I have 2 credit cards, a car payment, and a personal loan, and I'm pumping $700 a month to servicing debt. And let's say I pay off that personal loan, and that frees up $200 of my $700. I'm going to still use that $200 to service debt. I'm just going to redirect that $200 to the next debt item on my snowball list or my avalanche list. With that $200 that I freed up, I'm not going to go get another toy.
No, I mean, remember the rule of 72s, guy. This is where I really think the rubber meets the road, is most of our debt is a lot higher interest rate than the stuff that we're getting interest back on, our CDs or our mutual funds or whatever that is, the debt often has a much higher interest rate. So this is super important.
So in order to successfully get out of debt faster through a snowball or avalanche method, you have to be determined to use that same dollar amount from your budget, your monthly budget, to service debt until all your debt is gone. Okay. You can't, once you pay one debt off, you can't take that money that you quote unquote freed up and go buy something, go buy a toy or this or that. Right. Go to Olive Garden and celebrate for one night. Okay. But then get back on the debt reduction horse and ride it until the very end. Okay.
Till it's all paid off. That's the goal. Debt free. You
can find snowball and avalanche calculators on the internet. So, I mean, you don't have to contact me or any financial professional. You can actually do it yourself. The next milestone is cash flow. And this is one of my favorites because really what cash flow as a milestone in finance is thinking about how to have more money left over after taxes, benefits. When I say benefits, I mean, paying for your health insurance, paying for your disability insurance, the stuff that comes out of your paycheck, right? How to have more money left over after taxes, benefits, and your basic expenses are taken care of, right? There's a few key ways to do that. There's a few key ways to have more money left over after you pay for all that stuff. The first one is budgeting, right? So many of us go through life, we just whip out the debit card and we put our PIN number in or whatever. We get up the credit card. We don't know what we're spending money on. We don't know because we don't track it. We don't pay attention to it. I can honestly find hundreds of dollars with most of the people that I sit down with and talk about their budget. I can find hundreds of dollars that they don't even know they're spending, or they didn't know that they were spending that much on eating out, for example, or lattes at Starbucks. Right?
my personal favorite, man. People add that stuff up and holy crap.
A few hundred dollars. Listen to this. A few $100s a month.
Oh my gosh.
Over many years with compound interest could be your retirement nest egg. It could be million plus.
Totally. And you don't know this crap until you write it down. I mean, it's eye-opening what Jared's saying, what he does with clients. Sit them down and write this stuff out. Take that home with your wife, spouse, whoever it is, and literally make that list. I mean, it's kind of, it's one of those topics that nobody really wants to talk about, but I promise you, it'll be liberating because once you see where all that money goes, you can start eliminating stuff. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these things, I think what gets me is like all these recurring subscriptions that you forget that you even have. It's like, do we really need to have Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, all this extra stuff? Maybe we can just pick one, we just forget, so this is super important stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I look at my budget line items every year and I say, how can I get that lower? Even if I've been with X car insurance company for 10 years, how can I get that lower? Like, I don't owe that car insurance agent any loyalty. I've made him rich in bits and pieces because I've never been in an accident. Right? Has he ever come to me and said, hey, you've been a great client. I'm going to lower your premium by 15, 20%. No.
Never happened to me.
Shop around. I know it's a pain in the butt. Look at your budget line items and every year say, how can I get this to be less of an expense than it was last year? Right? So budgeting, super important. You can find all different kinds of budget worksheets. You can do it in Excel, right? But it's important to do it, not just create it, but track it. If all you do is create your budget and you don't actually see how you spend money, then you haven't really done the work. And there are so many things that you can do on your phone. It does the tracking. It categorizes it for you. It's really easier than it used to be.
Totally. That's so much easier than it used to be. Forget the paper and pencil. This is all easily identifiable, but you got to actually do it.
So that's one way that you can have more money left over is by budgeting. The other way is looking at different income streams, right? We live in the gig economy, right? You can come home from work and maybe if you don't have kids or maybe if your kids are already gone from the home or, maybe your wife or your husband is willing to watch the kids in the evening and you go drive Uber or Lyft or whatever. The gig economy lets you have additional streams of income at so much easier than it was before. If you have, a mother-in-law suite or something, you could do Airbnb. I mean, these things are exploding all around us. So take advantage of that kind of thing and look at ways that you can have additional income streams. And it's not just the gig economy, but maybe a home-based business, right? Home-based businesses are extremely powerful for a couple ways. One is you can earn extra money on the side, but two, the tax benefits of a home-based business are absolutely amazing. Okay, we'll get to that. That's the third one, right? Of cash flow. But let's finish up on the second one. So be creative and go find some income streams that are outside of your 9 to 5. Okay, because a couple extra $100 a month, it doesn't take that much to earn a couple $100 a month doing something on the side. It really doesn't. But if you do that couple $100 a month and you invest that over 20, 30 years, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can use for retirement. It only takes a little bit to make a huge difference. A couple $100 a month going towards your debt snowball or your debt avalanche means you'll get out of debt years earlier. Depends on the numbers, right? We'd have to crunch the numbers, but $200 to $300 a month makes a huge difference. And you can definitely do that with an alternative stream of income. So look into that. And then finally, taxes. How do you have more money left over after taxes, benefits, and basic expenses? Don't pay as much in taxes. Okay, don't pay as much in taxes. The most powerful singular way that I've found to do this is to have have 1099 income, be an independent contractor, be a small business owner, have a home-based business, because then everyday expenses that you can't deduct from your taxes when you're a W-2 worker at a corporation, right? And you get that W-2 every year, then you file your taxes. Everyday expenses like cell phones, right? Like mileage when you go drive for your business, right? Things like
your home computer, whatever,
yes.
Lots of
you
stuff.
You buy a home computer. Maybe you're in a business where you need to show people PowerPoint presentations, and you buy this awesome projector. That's a business expense. You can also use it to show cool movies to your kids at home, right? All these, if you have a home-based business, the tax benefit is so amazing. Like on my hand, I can list the people that I love, like tons in my life. And, it's my wife, my kids, my family, and then it's my tax guy. Because my tax guy,
that's awesome.
He's helped me realize that 1099, your own business, sole proprietor business, or whatever your business structure is, a home-based business is a way for you to legally keep more of your money instead of giving it to Uncle Sam. So that's super, super powerful. So you guys should look into it. Even if you don't think you'd be good at a home-based business, there's lots of things you can do out there. So think about it. And I promise you that if you do that and you have a tax guy that doesn't just file your taxes, but sits down and strategizes with you, that you will be forever grateful that you listened to this podcast. I promise you.
Absolutely. And this is, we're talking about paying every penny that you owe in taxes, but not a penny more, right? These are real strategies. This is all legit stuff. And there's guys out there that are really adept and really, really good at this, because at the end of the day, this is one of those opportunities a lot of us don't even think about. So thanks for bringing that up. I think that's so key.
So if you do go this route and you want to reap the tax benefits of having a home-based business, just be prepared. You're not going to pay, the $29.99 for, what is it, TurboTax, right? Having someone file your taxes is cheap. Having someone strategize with you and make sure that you have the legal entities in place, that you have the business benefit structure in place so that you can pay yourself first instead of paying Uncle Sam, that does cost more than going to TurboTax. But from my own personal experience and opinion, it is well worth the investment. So Take a look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have 2 milestones left, and I appreciate you guys listening to all this fun financial stuff. Hopefully we haven't put you to sleep. I think this stuff is super exciting. The 6th milestone is building wealth. And this is interesting. When we say building wealth, we're really talking about investing, right? Investing and growth of that investment. And it took us 5 milestones to get to this one. 5 milestones. Most people, when they think about building, a financial plan, they're like, I have to invest, I have to get into the stock market. But I'm telling you, it's the 6th milestone, right? Because what happens if you don't have your debt under control, but you have an awesome 401k that's like $200,000, whatever the amount is. You don't have your debt under control. You don't have an emergency fund, and you don't have life insurance. And let's say you pass away. What's your spouse going to have to do? Your spouse is going to have to cash out that 401k. He or she is going to have to pay taxes on the 401k, federal and state. And he or she will probably be younger than 59 and a half, because let's say it was a premature death. he or she's going to have to pay an additional 10% tax penalty on that 401k. So he or she's only going to have like half of the money that was in your 401k, right? Instead, you could have all those milestones taken care of throughout your life, and your significant other wouldn't have to touch the 401k. So that's why I say, yes, investments and building wealth are really important, but you have to take care of things in specific order so that your financial plan doesn't fall apart when something catastrophic happens. So when I say building wealth, what do I talk about? I mean putting your money away for the future. And depending on how risky you want to be or how low risk you want to be, there is a financial product for you out there. And each financial product exists because there's a demand for it. So if you think of the less risky investment to the highest risk investment, we start with like a savings account, right? It doesn't give you any interest at all, but it's liquid. You can go get your money anytime you want. And that's like basically cash. The next step up is CDs. If you go to the bank, you might be able to find a 1.5 or a 2% CD for a 5 or a 10-year period of time.
Maybe, doubt it, but maybe.
But that's the interest that you'll get on average. That's the interest you'll get every year, and it's guaranteed. The next is bonds, right? You can find corporate bonds that'll pay a little bit more than CDs you can find at the bank. There are municipal bonds, right? Above bonds in terms of higher return, but a little bit higher risk are things like fixed annuities, indexed annuities. Above that, you would find something like permanent life insurance or variable life insurance. And then you get to the area where your money's really in the stock market. And it can be in the stock market in a few different ways. You can buy mutual funds, which is a bunch of people that don't have a ton of money, pooling their money and then going and buying some assets in the stock market. That's basically, what a mutual fund is. You can have exchange traded funds. You can have managed money where you pay somebody a little bit more in fees for them to actively manage your money. So for example, there are managed money managers out there. When the stock market took a dive recently, you're asking which time, but when the stock market took a dive, an active money manager would take your money out of the market and put it into bonds or put it into cash. So you don't suffer the entire the downward trajectory of the market. That's managed money. And then you have stocks, right? An individual stock is the most risky investment because it's not diversified. But I'm not saying it's bad. See, each of these has a different risk and reward profile. You have to understand what risk you're willing to take and what reward you want. And you can't live with that. You can't live outside of that spectrum of risk and reward. You can't put your money in a CD and expect 8% return, right? But you're never going to lose money. You can't put your money in the market and expect an 8% return, but never have the risk of losing money, right? So you have to ask yourself a few questions. And I'm going to leave building wealth at these few questions that you should probably ask yourself when you're deciding where to put your money for investments in building wealth. How much are you okay with losing before you would lose your mind? Right?
Don't want you to lose your mind. So answer this.
So I have money in the market right now. I'm 40. I have many years for it to rebound. So I'm not freaking out. I sat down with somebody last week. He wants to retire in 7 years. He is freaking out because he came to us. He's a new client and he said, I can't handle this anymore. I can't handle this. I need some protection from downside market risk. So how much are you okay with losing before you would lose your mind? How many years until retirement? How many years until you want to stop doing what you're currently doing? And retirement could mean many different things to you. It could mean sitting on the rocking chair with a glass of lemonade every day. It could mean, I actually want to go work at something that I really enjoy and passionate about, and I don't care how much I make, right? Retirement means different things, but you have to know how many years until retirement. What are the fees? What do you get for the fees, right? Each of those different types of investments have different fees or different restrictions. You need to understand what those are and what you get for them. How are taxes treated, right? I told you the story of the 401k. There are many boomers that are retiring now. They were told that the 401k is the only way to go. They put all their money in the 401k. They get to retirement. They look at their statement. They're like, $1 million. I'm a millionaire. I'm a millionaire. But they don't realize how much of that Uncle Sam owns. How much of that does Uncle Sam own? Probably 30% if you're in California or one of these high tax states like New York, maybe 40%, right? You have to understand the tax treatment of what you're putting your money in so you're not surprised in retirement. How accessible is the money? Depending on when you need the money, you might choose one investment over another. What's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? What's the best that could happen? And if it's important to you, is there any downside risk mitigation? Like if the market crashes, what happens to my money, right? Does it move to cash? Does it move to bonds? Does it ride the wave, right? Those are some questions you should ask when you're talking about putting money away for building wealth. And like I said, there are tons of financial solutions and products out there. So this really is an area where you do need some professional guidance. I know there are a lot of day traders out there or people that want to do it themselves. That's great. I think you guys are a minority of the population. Most of us out there, we probably need to seek some financial guidance, some professional guidance in understanding where we should put our money for retirement. And the last milestone to close it out today is protecting your wealth, the seventh one. And when I say protecting your wealth, basically what I'm talking about is, you've worked your entire life to put all these things in place, to build your nest egg, to put money away, let it grow with compound interest. You don't want to give any of that away to people you don't want to give it to, right? Really? So you need estate planning. Even if you don't consider yourself wealthy, there are reasons to consider estate planning, okay? So what is estate planning? Estate planning are those legal documents that you need for you and your spouse, your family, in order to protect what's yours, okay? And there's a short list of basic estate planning documents, and then there's one that's kind of typically a little bit more advanced. So what are the basic estate planning documents? The first one is a will, right? A will identifies who will be the guardian of your minor or special needs children, who you want to carry out your wishes, and how you want your property distributed. So when I sit down with someone and I see that they have kids running around the house and I say, hey, do you have a will? And they say, no. I say, do you know that if both of you died in a car accident while you were out on a date, that your kids would be technically property of the state until a judge determines where they would go? And that opens eyes, right? It's worthwhile to invest a couple hours on a Saturday to go get a will, okay? Especially you out there that have minor children. Now, I can't guarantee that situation is what you would face in your state because wills are very state jurisdiction related, but don't risk it. Just go get a will. And a will isn't just for naming the guardianship of your kids. It's for distributing your assets. Where do you want your assets to go when you pass away? Another document is a financial power of attorney. So that gives your spouse or other trusted person control over your financial affairs, like paying your bills, insurance, taxes, or selling your property if you're not able to do it yourself. So if you got into a car accident and you were in a coma, you can't pay the bills, right? But you want someone to be able to do that for you, typically your spouse or maybe one of your kids. They can't do that for you if you don't have a financial power of attorney. No matter how much they beg the company to let you pay the bills or have access to your account so you know what to pay, they can't do that unless they have a financial power of attorney. Another one is an advanced healthcare directive or living will. This is another legal document, and it identifies the person you want to make your healthcare decisions if you can't make them for you. So this is like the financial power of attorney, but it's regarding medical decisions. And it's really important to have one because you don't want to have a family where one side of the family says, keep him alive. The other side says, no, unplug him. That gets really nasty.
Trust me, I've been there with so many people over the years, and if everybody had this dialed in and figured out, it would be so much less stress for the remaining family members. I mean, it's the last thing you want to have to deal with at a trying time like that. So plan ahead here, super important.
And the last one is the HIPAA release, which, you can find those anywhere, but it basically allows your healthcare agent or a family member to access your medical records and insurance information to facilitate your medical treatment. So those are the basic 4 estate planning documents. There's one more that usually costs a little bit more to get, but it's worthwhile, and it's called a trust. And basically what a trust allows you to do, one of the primary benefits of having a trust, it allows you to avoid probate court. So even if you have a will, your estate has to go through probate court. And maybe your estate is only your house and maybe a couple cars and some personal belongings. That still has to go through probate court in most states, okay? And probate court isn't free. Probate court, you have to pay the judge, you have to pay the attorneys. There are probably some other fees associated depending on your jurisdiction. So let's say maybe mom and dad, maybe dad's the only surviving person out of your parents. Dad passes away, and the only thing they have to pass along to the children is a house. Okay. And let's say that the kids are a little cash strapped. They have to pay for probate court, the cost of probate court somehow. What are they going to have to do in order to pay for probate court? They're going to have to sell the house. They're going to have to sell the house, that maybe the house they grew up in, right? And all of this because mom and dad didn't set up a trust. What a trust allows you to do is to avoid probate court. So probate court has a judge that says, okay, yeah, here's the will. And yes, according to the will, we're going to distribute the assets. A trust allows you to identify the person that you trust to distribute your assets. So the trustee that you name is replacing the judge from probate court. And your estate is handled outside of probate court. So you don't have to pay all that. I mean, you wouldn't be paying, you'd be dead, but this is a legacy thing, right? It's your kids and your grandkids. Why give a court what you want to be passed down to your legacy? So that's the importance of a trust. So I know we've talked a lot today, but just in summary, the 7 milestones that we talked about were: first, get some education about finances, invest in this area of your life. Second, get the right kind and the right amount of protection. So insurance, right? And reassess that on a regular basis. Third, if you don't have an emergency fund now, start one. And if you do have one, keep it going, okay? Fourth, debt management. If you're swimming in debt, or maybe not swimming, but you look at your debt situation, you're like, I could do better. Do better. Use the avalanche or snowball method and be committed until all your debt is gone. Fifth, cash flow. Be creative and disciplined in finding new ways to have extra money left over to go pay down your debt or go invest in your future. Fifth, building wealth, right? Investing in your future and finding the right assets, the right financial instruments that give you the adequate risk and reward profile that you're looking for. And seventh, protect your wealth through estate planning. You don't want to give your money to courts or the government if you don't have to. So keep it within your family and carry your legacy on. So thank you very much for the time. Thanks, Thomas, for the opportunity. I love this stuff. As you can see, I could probably talk for another couple hours.
Hey, and that's cool, man. Much. We can have you back on a future episode. Wow, that was a lot of stuff, and that was super important. Every little thing, and I've heard this talk from Jared before, but what was I doing over here? I was taking more notes, man. There's stuff that, even though I've been through most of this, there's stuff I can still improve on it. And so I appreciate you, Jared. That was awesome. I'll put in the show notes there how people can reach out to you if they want to contact you, if they have questions. We'll put that all in the notes there so you guys can feel free to reach out. I'm sure he'd love to help you out with this. This is obviously, a passion of his. He's like, I'm a, medical geek. He's a financial geek, and he loves this stuff. So feel free to reach out to him. Thanks again for joining us tonight. Really appreciate that. We're going to just continue on. We got lots more podcasts coming your way. So feel free to also shoot us some feedback with respect to topics you want to hear about, because like I've mentioned many times before, all things health are really, fair game here. So reach out to us and take care, and aloha.